Now let's talk about support. So I am going to clearly define and differentiate the three core teams that are probably the most central to customer success. There is implementation that helps people be primed and set up to go into customer success. It's that bridge between sales and customer success. Then there is customer success itself. And then there's support. And a lot of time it's very tempting to make these one team, and that it can't be one team. And one thing that Aptitude did that was really interesting was there was a dedicated support team that was always on the live support chat that was always there, but it was all in-house. And so they all did that work during work hours. And because it was split between a bunch of different time zones across the US, you had some people come in early, some people stay late, some people who were in different offices across the country take over different time zones for support. But also, one thing that was very, very difficult to maintain, but was one of the most important things I think in the entire company, was that people in basically every single role took turns on support shifts. And the tool that was used in the time that I was there was Intercom. There was Intercom for communication, which is a live chat service. And then there was Asana and Jira for support tickets that were written for and sent to dev, and then Salesforce for tracking. These are the most common tech stack. Uh, but that live support chat was really, really important for Aptigy's success because we're talking about K-12 school districts. We're talking about very fast moving and prone to a lot of crises and the epicenter of anything that could possibly happen, good or bad. So if there's a crisis, all of a sudden that's a real test of your implementation. It's a real test of your onboarding. It's a real test of your customer success. It's a real test of whether or not the school district leaders can handle it in a crisis, whether the tool works, whether they can use it. And so real-time support was an enormous advantage of Aptigee. And this is one of the thorniest conversations about AI, but let's get to that in a second. So one thing that was a core piece of Aptigy's approach is that people would switch off on support shifts. Everyone, basically every single team had 1 to 2 shifts a week. There'd be like a 4 to 6 hour shift where they would be, I think they were four, but they were on support, where they would be sitting at the desks doing the support chat, talking to people live in the chat. And that was so important for cross-pollinating between teams, for lack of a better term. I've already talked several times about the importance of every single different team at every single different level, understanding the kinds of questions that come up and being able to speak to thorny product questions that come up from any time, anywhere. So it was really good training on speed of communication. It was really good training on clarity of communication, and it was really good training on the product. And it was really helpful for me too. For example, I'd hop on a support chat, somebody would reference an issue coming up, and then somebody else on support would message me directly and say, "Hey, yes, this is a bug we're tracking. Add reports to this ticket. Here's the workaround they can use." And then that, when I went back to my portfolio for my customer success clients, I knew that in advance. And that not only gave me something to, when I was talking live to my customers, if I saw them wrestling with that same issue or it was something that came up that they reached out about, I would know the workaround, I would know the solution, I would know that issue, I'd be primed for that, which I wouldn't necessarily get if I hadn't been on that support team talking to those support folks live. And that's really important to have that. And also, this is going to make some people flinch, but if I knew about an existing bug and I immediately had some customers that I knew that could be pretty sure were experiencing that, maybe they were heavy users of a specific tool, maybe they were low communicators, maybe I was generally aware that this is the kind of thing that would bother them, but they wouldn't say anything. I could reach out proactively and say, "Hey, there is this known issue. We're actively working on it. Is this something you've encountered?" And more often than not, that was a really healthy conversation where they were a silent churn risk because they had been banging their head against this issue and they hated it, but they hadn't said anything. And they were just examining and meeting with other competitors because of this issue. And so I know that it's somewhat frowned upon in certain customer success approaches and disciplines to proactively reach out about issues. It is a gamble, but it's also incredibly important to have that level of proactive communication and train your team on how and when to use it. Because, of course, there's sometimes you don't want to poke the bear. But other times, the risk of not saying anything is so much higher than saying something to someone who wasn't aware of the bug. If they are bothered by you reaching out and saying, "Hey, there's this bug, we're working on it. Wasn't sure if you were affected or not. I just wanted to make sure you knew." The kind of customer that's going to be upset about that is somebody who is already a churn risk who you want to be talking to more often, not less. So hiding that kind of thing serves no purpose. Not being proactive about it serves no purpose. And again, talking about customer centricity and all the possible touch points where you could build a sticky relationship, where you could have a customer be a returning customer and be a reliable renewal. Proactivity is one of the core pieces. Product knowledge, current events knowledge, customer knowledge, and understanding when and where to use each of these in a way that is proactive, not reactive. So you're not waiting for a fire. You are giving people a fire extinguisher before they even see a fire. You're telling them how to use it or how to get around this so that it doesn't become an issue during an actual crisis. Like the absolute worst possible case is you don't say anything, school district has a crisis, and then they discover the bug. That is your chain of events that you should absolutely be avoided at all costs. And I shouldn't have to say that. That should be very obvious. But there is that hesitance to be proactive about bugs because you don't want to admit fault. You don't want to tell people something is broken. But not telling people something is broken is counterproductive. Just outlining that. Aptitude was really good about that. We did a lot of proactive outreach and reaching out to customers to say, hey, they're aware of this, we're working on fixing it. And over time, the long time recurring customers saw that proactivity. They saw that level of engagement. They saw that I was aware of this bug, but I didn't say anything, and I didn't know that Apogee was aware that we were having this bug. But they reached out and told me about it anyway without me saying anything. That was pretty cool. Or they could see over time that ticket resolution sped up, or they could see that the number of issues went down, or we learned from past mistakes. And that's the thing too, is demonstrating your progress is a really good way to build trust as well. Not just short-term trust, but upsell renewal later on trust comes from them trusting not just the way you are, but trusting where you're going and the way you're going to be. That again is this trust built relationship and why that's so important. All of this was in the conversation about support. And that's hugely important. I was looking for this, but one of Aptogee's incredible competitive advantages was real-time support. And not just real-time support from a call center where people would ask you to confirm your details and identity before answering anything. Support from your customer success manager, support from implementation people, often support from actual dev team members. Like I learned so much from sitting side by side in a support chat with one of the actual developers. And we would never have had a case to work directly that way that much if we weren't sharing a support shift. That was huge. So then, if I had a certain kind of conversation, I knew who to reach out to, I knew what language to use to describe it. It made me better at writing tickets, it made me better at understanding development, made me better at understanding the product. That was a level of training and cross team pollination that cannot be overstated. It was huge. And that is also when I learned that one of the absolute best people in the world to have in a customer facing call, especially in a crisis, was our mobile developer. Our lead Android mobile developer who worked on the Android app of the company was one of the best people to bring in a de-escalation call or a bug conversation. He was so good. And if I just left him siloed in development, I never would have known that. If I hadn't seen him on a support shift, I never would have known that. If he was always siloed that way, he probably wouldn't have been that good. But because he spent time in support shifts, he understood the customer centric part of this so much better. And having the product folks spend some time in support shifts as well helped them meet other members of the team, had them actually talk to customers, which is extremely unusual for a development team, and was really, really powerful in kind of informing everything, like really extraordinary. Now, downside. Obviously, we're talking about support shifts. These are intensive, these are live. You have people have to sit there for the hours on this and be like live on the support shift. That's asking a lot of people, and a lot of people don't necessarily want to do it. And if you hire for software developers, they're not necessarily cut out to do this. And it's one of those things where either everyone does it, or if you give windows where some people don't have to do it, then it becomes very challenging to convince everyone to do it. And then suddenly fewer people are taking more longer shifts. Uh, and that was always a tricky balance, even for Aptogee's kind of like early stage, let alone hyper growth stages, was balancing the intensity of that support, the importance of it, with kind of the other parts of the role and other aspects of the company. And that's something I haven't fully wrangled with yet. Honestly, this is the least solved of the conversations, which is a bummer too, because it's one of the ones that's being outright replaced with AI, which can be good if you're talking real time help, sure. But it better be good. It can't just be fast, it can't be real time. It has to actually solve the problems, especially in a crisis. Because if somebody has a crisis, your customer is like, there's a fire and they are trying to evacuate kids and they need to let parents know immediately. If your AI bot says, I don't understand the question, please track it later, or says, oh, you don't have permissions with no human touch on that, and it takes long enough to pull in a human that the crisis is resolved, that is going to destroy your company's reputation overnight. So going pure AI, especially depending on the product you have, is a massive risk. And it's one of those things where I'm probably mildly traumatized having this like crisis prone level of customer base as working with K-12 school districts. But it's one of those things that does inform and make me very sensitive to support approaches and the importance of doing it well. And it's also important to note that that level of support is one of Aptogee's biggest competitive advantages and how one of the key reasons, one of the most visible, most vocally talked about, most important reasons why so many customers switch to Aptogee from competitors so quickly. And it was one of the few things that no company has caught up to Aptogee on. Even as Aptogee has gone to a more standard approach that I think it's a combination of call centers and AI, it's still better than what other companies were able to pull out. But in the early days, it was hands down, bar none, the absolute best, most effective, most powerful support team ever. I don't think there has ever been a support team that good. And I will stand on that and I'll defend that. But yes, there we go. So support is tricky, but it is really, 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 really important that the people who actually do your support or the bots that do your support understand your customer base as well as your company does. They need to understand the why. They need to understand the what, the how. The more of them have familiar names that are actually people that your customers talk to, the better. The more consistent they are, where your customers start to recognize them by name, the better. The more they're able to extrapolate context beyond just the closure rate or the length of conversations, the better. If you're going to have support, it should be your competitive advantage. It should extend all of the other things, should extend that positive relationship from sales, should extend that customer centricity from marketing. It should extend the effective use of the product and the public advertising the product from onboarding. It is crucially important and very easy to understate because there is no direct obvious impact on revenue unless you start asking your customers, unless they're very vocal and you hear how many of them say, we went with your company because of the support. We renewed for 5 years because of the support. We upsold and got other products through you because even though the platform was worse, your support was so good that we left our previous vendor. I cannot again overstate the importance of good support. But again, I also want to say it doesn't have to be AI free. You can have AI in there. The AI better be really good. Just saying. So there's that one. Support is a thorny one that I'm still actively working through, but I did want to make sure to highlight what Aptigee did, why it was so powerful, and where it matters.